What is up, guys? We are doing a guide for the Gauntlet. This is going to be geared towards the people who are new to the Gauntlet or they are struggling to get their first kill count. So first thing we do is we gather up materials around the starting area. And since I'm doing a tier 1 armor prep, I'll be dropping tools I don't need anymore as I go. I skipped the fish right here because we'll focus on getting those later in prep. I check this wall because it's going to be one of the first walls that you can see one of the demi-bosses in. There is a bear, which we'll keep in mind for future reference. Then I run over here, check the second one. I skip those rocks because I only needed 3. I attack the spider because he's the easiest one to kill out of these 3, and you don't usually have to pray against these guys because they won't hit very hard, but if they're hitting you a lot, then it wouldn't be a bad idea to pray against them. You should open the demi-boss doors off to the side, that way you don't get hit by their attacks while you're off prayer. And luckily he dropped the weapon frame on the first kill, and run over here, check the third one, and there was nothing in there, so we move on. I decided to grab the herbs, so I have them for potions whenever I'm ready to make them. And I usually grab 3, and I'll explain why later. I ignore all these guys because we're going to be making a weapon here in a moment. Here I dropped the rocks because I don't have all the materials for the armor yet, so I'll be gathering up those later. And I made a staff so I can kill things a little bit quicker. Made some vials so I can make potions as the time comes. I started attacking these guys because they're pretty much free kills and it helps me get the shards a little bit quicker. I moved right here to drag the enemies to the same spot so I didn't have to run all over to pick up the loot. Here I started picking up the shards so I have enough for later whenever I need to make all my equipment. I upgraded my staff so I do more damage. Made a teleport seed just in case I need one later. I tried to make a bow but I realized I didn't have enough shards. Here I filled up my vials with water so I can start making potions and save some inventory space. I ignored that herb because I don't need it. Now we're looking for the other demi-bosses and more materials so we can make the armor. Checked here, and there's a dark beast, but I ran over here to collect the cotton since it was close. I killed the bat so it wouldn't damage me while I'm fighting. Now when you go to fight the demi-bosses, you'll want to make sure that you're praying against them before the fight starts, that way you don't take any damage, and you'll take a lot if you don't. Dark Beast, you'll want to pray range, and for the dragons you'll want to pray mage. You'll want to keep your prayers up until their death animation is over, because a lot of times they'll send out one last shot as they're dying. I have a plugin that highlights the bowstring and the orb so I don't miss them whenever I'm going through these rooms. I fished these because they're far away from the base and I didn't want to have to come back in case I didn't have enough. Here I start working on finishing my potions so I have more inventory space. And it's best to make the potions while you're moving, that way you have more time. Here I got a bear. I decided to kill it just for extra shards and just in case I run across another bear and not a dragon. That way I can get my second weapon up to tier 3. Now when you're fighting the demi-bosses, you want to make sure that you're flicking your prayers so that you can kill them a little bit faster. And with the bears, you don't have to pray melee against them because you're going to be fighting them from a distance anyway. However, if you're just running through the room and not fighting them, you'll want to make sure your prayer's on because they smack you hard. Here I loot the demi-boss, making sure to pick up any shards and fish for future use. And although I'm not going to be using melee for the boss, I picked up the weapon shards so I could crush it into 80 more shards. Earlier I dropped my pestle and mortar in hopes that I'd find a dragon in the next room, but I didn't. So I went back and picked it up so I can crush the weapon shard. Here I'm just skipping all these creatures because I'm pretty much going to have all the shards I need already. Here I grab these logs because I will need them for the armor. I dropped the axe because I didn't need it anymore. I start filling my inventory with a little bit more fish since I'm right here. And I drop the scepter because I'm not going to be opening up any more rooms and I want one more fish. Here I teleported back to base so I can start consolidating my inventory and preparing for the last parts of prep. Here I combine my potions and drink the leftover dose so I can restore my prayer and run through the rest of the floor. Here I make and start upgrading the bow. If you learn the hotkeys, it'll speed things up a bit too. Here I start picking up the ores so I can start making the armor. I didn't have enough space to pick them all up, so I made what I could, picked up the last piece, and made the rest. After that, I equipped them. Then I head over and cook some fish so I can heal up and have an extra inventory space for another piece. I'm going back to the first bear I found because the third demi-boss you kill will drop the missing weapon piece you haven't found yet. Here I started to kill the bear so I can get the orb to upgrade my staff to tier 3. I decided to switch to my bow because it's already tier 3 and it has more accuracy. The bow and the staff both have 4 tick cycles, but you want to make sure you have the bow on rapid, otherwise it'll be 5 ticks. At this point, I usually start organizing my inventory so I know where things are whenever I'm fighting the boss. Here I decided to fill up the rest of my inventory with as many fish as I can grab. And then we head back home to finish up. Here I upgrade the staff to tier 3 and then I head over to cook my food. Now if you look in the boss room, you'll notice he's praying range, so you want to make sure you equip your staff before going in there. The boss always starts off using range, so you want to make sure you use protect from range before going in. Turn on your best offensive prayer, and I always use steel skin because it makes me use less food and gives me a better chance at surviving. Walk in, attack the boss, and run to the opposite side of the arena so it drags him away from the wall by 1 square. You'll need that space so you can run in between him and the wall later whenever you're attacking him and there's no other space to run. Periodically, he'll change the color of tiles in the arena. Blue ones are safe to walk on, but just for a few seconds. They'll turn yellow, and if you step on them, they'll deal high typeless damage to you that you can't avoid. So you'll want to make sure you avoid all the yellow tiles the entire fight. Eventually he'll spawn in tornadoes that last for several seconds, and he does this throughout the fight. If they hit you, they cause unavoidable typeless damage. As long as you're constantly moving around the room and avoiding the yellow tiles on the floor, you shouldn't take any extra damage. Listen closely. That's the sound he makes whenever he turns off your prayers while he's attacking with magic. And this can happen during his last attack with magic too, so you want to make sure that if he does do that, you get your prayers up and that they're right. This animation is the one he does when he's changing his attack style, so you want to keep an eye out for that. And the stomp animation is when he's summoning in more tornadoes. Eat and drink while you're avoiding the tornadoes. A lot of people recommend counting his attacks so you know when to change your prayers, but if you have game sounds on, I find it easier to just listen to his attacks and change your prayer once you hear the indicator. Listen closely. It's that wah sound. The obvious indicators of what attack he's using is by looking at the actual attack. If it's the orb, it's magic. If it's the spiky torpedo, it's range. The magic attack has a lower pitched sound to it, and the range attack has a higher pitched sound to it. It's really helpful knowing what they sound like, especially during the chaotic parts of the fight. That way you have visual and audio cues of what you should be praying while you're focused on other things. Moving into the important details of the phase change of the boss, which happens at 200 hit points in the regular gauntlet. The floor patterns change more frequently and in different positions than they were previously. The safest spots to stand in are the 2 tiles, 3 tiles away from any door. This is because no yellow tiles will spawn here, so you're safe here until he spawns in more tornadoes, like here. The key things to do to make sure that you survive is to constantly be moving and make sure you don't step on any of the yellow tiles. If you have to choose between walking on the tiles or stepping under the Hunliff and getting trampled, you'll want to step under him. It's better to get trampled by the boss, because he can hit zeros. The floors won't. Again, the best time to eat and drink potions is usually whenever you're avoiding the tornadoes. And this is because you're gonna be running around and not really doing much damage to the boss anyways, so take advantage of that. If you're still having trouble defeating the boss, it's most likely because you haven't spent too much time in the boss room, and you're likely making too many mistakes during the fight. So I would highly recommend just spending more time in the boss room, which means not prepping and just getting an inventory full of fish instead, and just practicing in the room, learning his mechanics. If you're stuck and you still can't figure it out, post a comment and tell me what's going on, and I'll do my best to try to either answer, or I can make a new video and explain what I would do in your situation. If you found this video helpful or you learned something new, please consider liking and subscribing, and I would appreciate it. Good luck.